Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's interview with Ron Kanfi. He's a good friend of mine. We have known each other for roughly 5, 6 years. We've had dinner and meals in New Orleans, New York, a variety of different places as we work together on his greeting card company called Nobel Works. They sell really humorous, funny greeting cards. I've come to be a consumer of these cards, and you probably would be surprised how many cards Ron sells on an annual basis. He's very humble about it, but it's a very meaningful size business, and Ron's done an amazing job growing it for the last several decades. So excited to have Ron here. I think he's a very deep thinker and somebody that I'm excited to have this conversation with. So welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
I want to start, Ron, go ahead. Did you have something there?
No, I was just saying I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Yeah. I want to start by just saying I think Ron comes from a very diverse background. He's there in New York City. Ron, I'd love to hear maybe a little bit about your initial start to your journey. You were an immigrant to the United States when you were young. Would love to hear a little bit about how you got started in your journey here in the U.S. and so forth.
Well, I came here, like you said, when I was 21. I created these little kids' drawings that I printed the black and white outline for them and um, hand colored them and framed them in glass clips. And on the weekends I would hitchhike to the big city and sit on the street and sell them and collected enough money to buy a round trip ticket to come here and $1,000.
Sure.
I came with a backpack, literally a brown, backpack, like classic backpack with a sleeping bag, and tied up on top, and two pairs of jeans and one pair of sneakers, kind of thing. And the plan was to travel across country, buy a car, drive to travel across country, maybe find something to do. It was my alternative to going to study to some sort of university or college because I had no idea what I really wanted to study and had no intention to study something just for the sake of it. And figured I'll, learn more English here than in any school by being here. So the idea was to come here for 6 months. Very quickly, it became apparent that,
Where did you originally come to? Was it New York?
yes, I came to New York. I had an aunt here that met me at the airport and took me to a place in the bowels of Brooklyn, sort of like down the street from Archie Bunker's apartment. Literally, it looked just like that. And I remember sitting in her kitchen and said, it's afternoon. I was like, let me just go walk around. I got to see something, right? Like we drove straight to her house. And I walk around the block and I come back and I'm like, I don't really know the difference between the boroughs and all that, but I can imagine I came for this. And that's what it looked like in the movies. And she said, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to go to Manhattan. I was like, really? What's Manhattan, right? To me, coming from a small town, it's like New York was New York. It's like, a city is a city. Like the idea that the bars were so different. So the next day, I take the bus to the city and she hooks me up with my cousin and we have lunch um, um, on the east side. And I end up obviously realizing that, okay, this is where I need to be. And um, living with his cousin for 3 months in a tiny little apartment on 14th Street, um, and got a job. I mean, they fixed me up with a job, washing dishes in a cafe
Okay.
uh, in the East Village. Now, the little drawings I was selling, my idea was, oh, I'll come here and I license them to greeting cards and maybe I'll make some money. Well, I realized pretty quickly that they weren't quite, your the caliber that was required um, to really license them. So I'm watching this in this cafe and made friends with a cook, and the cook's roommate was Christopher Noble's assistant. Now, Christopher Noble is the person who started Nobel Works, as you might have guessed from the name. And um, back then, it was a tiny little company, it just started, first year. and we were publishing black and white cards with a stripe of latex paint squirted out of animal glue bottles. And he hires me to basically paint those little lines of paint on the cards. I got paid 2 cents a line. Now, mind you, this is 1983. I was making over $10 an hour, which was in 1983 was a lot of money. Minimum wage was $1.75 or something, or $2. Tax free, of course. Don't tell anybody. And I did that for a while. Then decided to go travel. I got as far as Toronto, came back, and he offers me a job to be his assistant or to work with him, which I accepted. Well, first he offered it to me, and I was like, no, I want to go travel. So I come back to New York, and okay, the offer was still on the table, and I started working for him. And after I don't know how long it was, a couple of years or a year, he basically offered me a partnership. Um, Realizing that I'm probably not going to be happy sort of just packing orders and for the rest of my life, but recognizing, I guess, that he wanted me to work with him. So he just gifts me ownership or percentage shares, which I gladly accepted.
I imagine so. Did you realize the value of it at the time when somebody just says, hey, here's...
Well, it was very exciting, value as in how many dollars it was worth. I don't think I stopped to calculate them, but it probably wasn't worth a lot,
at the time.
real value. But it was definitely very flattering, and no, I was very excited about that. I mean, it was very smart move on his part because I'm very much an entrepreneur, and the ownership made all the difference. And I mean, it's not that I was doing a bad job, but my commitment to the company and to long term. And we are partners for 18 years. Granted, I never licensed the cards, right? But here I am, sort of end up working for a car company through the back door, right? Like when you sort of, I don't know, just open to what's happened, to life. There was some intention, I guess, about cards, and it didn't go quite that way, the way I thought, but it just happened another way. And I found myself not just working for a car company, but owning part of it. But I had those, a couple months of washing dishes in a restaurant, so I can actually have the classic success story, I suppose.
It's pretty unbelievable and very fortuitous that you came with the intention to work for a card company.
Yeah.
You worked at a restaurant that somehow connected you to a card company.
Who would have thunk, right?
Who would have thunk?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
That's really, let me just...
Oh, good. That's cat.
Yeah. And this time, I don't think I even realized the connection. It's sort of like looking back, I'm sort of seeing the sort of the intent and where it ended up. And I think I was just open to anything, didn't have really, and I think throughout my life, it's like I never had a real precise goal, as in, I want to do this in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, or I want to be here, I want to be there. I mean, I knew that I wanted to come here. I knew that, I wanted to be out of the closet, and I wanted to be able to be open to being gay. And that was not going to work at the time where I grew up. And the truth is that...
Would you say, Ron, that was your primary reason initially for moving here, more so than even the card business that you felt constrained with?
No, the card business was, licensing card was, to cards was like sort of maybe something I can do, as in I knew I needed to make money, and that this $1,000 was not going to last very long. I was under the illusion that I'd be able to buy a car, you could drive across the country in a car that you buy for less than $1,000. Even in 1983, I became disillusioned very quickly. Once I started looking, I realized that whatever I'm going to buy for $500-600, I was not going to want to drive cross country. So that sort of like I had to change my expectations there very quickly. But no, I didn't. I did not come here, I'm going to make a career in cars. It just was like one of those things that maybe they could can make some money here.
So your primary reason was to live as a gay man freely, and you felt like it was the best opportunity to do so here.
Right. And I remember, that this cousin that I lived with managed a showroom on 57 and 5th, on the 42nd floor or something like that. Glass building overlooking the plaza and Central Park, Fifth Avenue. One of those glamorous, beautiful buildings right above
Yeah.
Bergdorf Goodman. And she needed a model. I'm not even the right size, but it doesn't matter. She needed somebody to model some clothes for the Barney's buyer or whoever was coming over. So she hired me. And I remember it was within the first week I was here. I remember walking into that, and I walked. It's all glass, floor to ceiling, right? Spectacular view, right? It doesn't get any more classic than that. Right across the street, the park, Fifth Avenue, and I remember standing there at the edge of this glass wall, and it was probably the most moving moments in my life. I mean, if you ask me if I ever felt like I had enough, or if I really happy, I was so elated and felt so liberated. And wow, I've arrived. Not only I arrived in New York City, which was a big deal, obviously, and here I was on top of the world, right? That was a pivotal, I suppose, moment when I realized. I remember saying this to myself. I will never lie again about sort of, if anybody has a problem with that, then they don't need to be in my life. That was a very important moment for me, having lived double, basically lying and living double life till then, which was torturous. It was really torturous.
I know at this point you've told me that you have a relationship with your family, at least somewhat of a relationship. Is when you moved here to the United States and you came out as gay, did that hurt those relationships that at that point mattered to you, or were they all pretty accepting?
No, actually, this cousin lived with a guy who was gay,
Okay.
uh, and they had like separate bedrooms, and so
Yeah.
I ended up living with them because I had a relationship with the guy for 3 months.
Mm.
So no, it did not. It did not hurt. I haven't had a close relationship with this part of the family that was here, except of that period. It's sort of
Curious.
a distant family.
I'm curious though, Ron. So you talk about that moment you're standing there in the building, all glass. You have these great views, and you just have this feeling that you call maybe one of the greatest moments of your life. How long did that last? How long did that feeling? How long were you able to hold on to it?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I don't know. Moments, day, two
Yeah.
days, a week. Clearly, that did not fix my happiness for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it was more of a joy than happiness. It was just really one of those moments that I remember as really moving and pivotal in who I am and how I live my life, and really liberating, like sort of
Mm.
a moment of truth. It's not that I've never lied since then, but that felt like there was a big lie in my life. There was sort of but you've known me for a while. I'm pretty forthcoming and truthful.
Yeah.
It's like I'll tell you how it is, and, maybe too much sometimes. And so whether you want to hear it or not. So the idea that I couldn't share, not that I need to share, it's anybody's business really, but I couldn't talk about my friends. I couldn't talk about what I was doing. I
Yeah.
couldn't talk about, it's not that being gay is so critical to who I am, but having to hide that part of my life really made me very unhappy.
Yeah.
And I was not comfortable with that.
Well, I
Um,
think I think I've found in my life that being authentic and just like honest with who I am is for me one of the only ways I can live up to like my true capacity, my true potential, right? Otherwise,
Absolutely.
I think you're held back because if you don't have an honest view of who you are,
Absolutely. And, I've always tried to be, it's interesting how much we actually lie to ourselves and lie to the people
I
around us.
agree.
I mean, how are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
are you really?
Yeah.
Right? So just on that level, you already lied. You're already not
Yeah.
truthful with yourself and with others, right? So it's a white lie and it's not really a lie and you can, but you're not really being, uh,
Yeah.
your truth. I think that's critical. I think that that's really important that we are in the truth. Integrity, to what extent, I try for it. Can't say that I'm always successful, but that was a big one.
Yeah.
That was really, anyway. So that was just really an elating moment that I remember very clearly.
I'm curious. So at that point, you've come here. We'll go fast forward to you have the 30% ownership in this card business now, or whatever the percentage was. I think you said 30.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, he was 15, then he went up, and
okay.
yeah,
So yeah, so you got offered the ownership. You're a young kid, right? 21,
21. Yeah,
22.
yeah.
So at that point in life, did you start thinking like what success looked like, what happiness looked like? Did you have a clear definition? You say you haven't had like clear goals of
That was
five,
it.
10 years, but you
That was.
felt like you had arrived.
I felt successful. I felt
Yeah.
like I said, like I told you earlier. It's like I and still today, um, I can't tell you that I have a standard or goal as
Yeah.
like what is
Yeah.
successful or what is happy or what is, I just sort of, today I look at it differently. I still do the same thing, but I can explain it differently. But back then, I was just living life, and
Yeah.
um, responding and I always believe that it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it.
Yeah.
I sort of had that um, understanding at a very young age. I don't know where I got that wisdom, but um, and that's how I dealt with life, all along. So everything that happened and everything, where I got happened uh, because of what I did with it, and
Yeah.
it didn't have a specific, this is what I need to be, and in mind,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
more than being happy and successful at whatever I was doing right now, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it sort of
Yeah.
happened.
You didn't, I think maybe, and maybe you can tell me if this is wrong, but it feels like you came to the US and maybe had just broken free from any sort of standards or expectations that would have controlled your happiness. And so you were in that phase of maybe still defining your success. Is that accurate to a point where you felt good, right? Because I say that because
Never
when I
stopped,
grew up,
never stopped to think, am I
yeah,
successful?
yeah, okay,
Okay, today, it's like literally ask that question. It's like, yeah, I've done well.
yeah,
I've had ups and downs. I've had good times, bad times. Um, if you want to call it that. I never sort of had a standard of what would success be and am I there or not, in terms of,
I admire that.
of sort of looking at life. I mean, of course I had, okay, I wanted to do this today or I wanted to,
Yeah,
make more money or whatever,
yeah, 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 yeah.
um, but it wasn't like, it wasn't a very defined sort of thing that I can look back and say, okay, I've achieved it. Like I didn't come here to have a card company. I didn't come here to,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I came here and, it's interesting, like my family and my friends all expected I'm coming back in 6 months. In my mind, I knew that that's not likely. If I could manage,
Yes.
I would probably want to stay longer. So that part, I had in the back of my mind. But again, it wasn't like a defined plan or like,
So then talk to me about the next stage in your journey as you 21, 22, you were partnering this card company, you run it for the next 18 years or so
well, we're
with your
partnered for
partner.
18 years. Then Christopher passed away from HIV. And I ended up buying the company um, from the state.
Okay.
Not without going. through a little divorce situation.
Yeah.
And actually, they went all the way to a court case. She was very sick, and um, it was a Friday afternoon, and you know, uh, whenever I get locked out and have to go to Chancery Court, and the whole thing, and the judge at that session basically makes you know the state walk over and give me the keys back to the office and say on Monday you're being reinstated, and we get out of the court, and I find out that Christopher Noble passed away at the hospital while we were. So here I am. I won my case in a way against a dead man. That was incredibly difficult, to lose Christopher. I mean, he was a good friend for a very long time, like family. And we did everything we were not partners, romantically, but he really was my best friend and spent the holidays with his family and the whole thing. It was very difficult. Um, but got to that too.
That is, yeah. When you say that you're in this lawsuit, this wasn't against Christopher Noble, or was it against Christopher Noble and his estate?
It
Because
was with his
his,
state.
okay, his heirs.
I mean, he was
Got
still
it.
alive, but it's
Yeah.
complicated. We don't need to get into that, but it's not a pretty story. But it is what it is.
So at that point, you have 100% of the business. What year is this? This is 18 years after. This is early 2000s.
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, something like that. Yeah, 2001, 2000.
At that point, do you have any idea like how many cards a year you were selling? No. um,
I
talk to
know.
me then
I looked
about.
at
Go
it,
ahead.
at number of cards. It's like, okay, how many dollars, right?
Yeah.
We were pretty small still back then. Yeah, but Christopher then asked me to be sales director. I get to travel all over the country.
Yeah.
So I've traveled and seen just about every state, every city, or wherever there was a trade fair. I guess they were, wonderful years, the '80s and early '90s. But then after Christopher passes, actually toward the end of the business was not doing well. I mean, there was a period of sort of the mauling of America, right, where Barnes
Yeah.
and Noble and Target and also came to be, and basically which is used to be very much a mom and pop line.
Yep.
We were controversial. We were poking fun at a lot of taboos, using a lot of words that you wouldn't use in front of your children, and we didn't fit. We didn't fit in that terrain in that market. And whenever Barnes and Noble or Target or whatever, with a big card department would move into town, the local stores, which were customers, would fold, as we
Mhm.
know, and so account base was shrinking, and uh, we were having financial problems. We were having, sales were not growing, and it was a difficult time. Then after Christopher passes, um, and the I sort of get the reins of the company. Um, Clearly, I had to do something to change things because we were not going to survive the way, the model that we had, the
Yeah.
offset printing, where you print, a large sheet of paper with 12 or 18 cards on it. And even if you only printed 2,000 sheets, which you had to do a certain minimum to get some sort of reasonable per unit cost, if you use the 20/80 rule, you can quickly realize how much stock you have that you either never going to sell or not going to sell in a reasonable amount of time. With the account base shrinking, that became a real problem. So at sort of a year into me running the business by myself, or not even, I I devised a plan to change. Clearly it's not what happens to you, but what to do with it.
Yeah.
And we just took three things. We start a website. Now, mind you,
Okay.
this is 2001. And for those of you that have been around then, this is dial-up times.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
is all years, you got mail and dial-up. This is time where people didn't want to put their credit card online. This are years where you couldn't buy let's say Nike shoes from the Nike store line, you could maybe buy them from Macy's, and even then you'll have a tiny little picture, right? And maybe one picture, and it was very, very different, very, very different. But I was an early adopter. I have multiple sclerosis, and walking around in stores and all has been challenging. I was already sick by then.
When did you get diagnosed with that?
In 89,
Wow.
yeah.
So
It, the diagnosis part is also an interesting story. It's like I had symptoms and go through a whole bunch of tests, try to determine what. Anyway, I get the diagnosis the night of the Gulf War. I remember that because I was sitting in the waiting room and watching the news. Yeah. So I was shopping online. I was using the internet.
you were forced into that sort of
Right.
environment because
Right.
yeah,
And
yeah,
here's, again, an example of how you take you know, what is and apply it to use it. So I had a good understanding, better understanding, I suppose, than the average Joe of what it's like to shop online and what's a good image looks like. And, you know, what was the frustrating parts about shopping
yeah,
on sites and saw the potential in it, right? Back then, most companies did not have a website.
yeah.
And it was considered a conflict of channel conflict because now
Your
you're competing
retailers would be
with
unhappy
the
with you.
retailers, yeah.
Yeah,
And necessity is the mother of all inventions, right? So we didn't have a choice. We were losing our retailers. We were losing our customer base. So I could, my customer was there. I just couldn't reach it.
yeah,
Like I wanted to sell the cards to you, but you wouldn't have a local store that sold their cards within, I don't know how many hundreds of miles around you.
yeah,
Even if you live in a big city. Well, in the big cities, maybe, but the minute you sort of left San Francisco or LA or New York, it was more challenging. So this was a way to reach the customer, sort of, bypass the void
yeah.
of the retailers.
Well, and if you're buying a car, if you're selling a card that maybe somebody didn't, a large group of people didn't feel comfortable seeing in the store, right?
Right.
It's almost
So,
like you want the
but
discrete packaging, right, for certain products, and this was your opportunity
right,
to
like
sell.
I couldn't sell to CVS or to, Target. They 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 wouldn't put this kind of stuff in
Yeah.
this. I mean, we did sell to Barnes and Noble and some, but that market is owned and still owned by the big,
Yep.
you know, that really large company. We're a tiny little player. I couldn't afford to buy displays and footage and service
Yeah.
it and all that stuff that entailed in selling to department stores and chain stores. So that was our way, and it was incredibly controversial. We had a couple of accounts that stopped selling us because of that.
Yeah.
Uh, but most they just didn't care that much, and later, reality proves that it's not the same customer. Yeah, there's a correction in the market or what have you, but at the end, it wasn't that big a deal, right? In
Yeah.
retrospect, there you can buy every brand from the brand store as well as a million other stores online, and it's way of life. But back then, it was a big risk. It was a sort
Yeah.
of there weren't many of us that in brand
Yeah.
that had brand stores. Not only that, we opened a wholesale website, which is a channel conflict with our sales reps.
Mm.
We paid them commission on orders that came through the website, but we realized that that was a service that was important, and there was a very wide move in retrospect. So the websites was, sort of one third of the plan. The second part of the three was we started licensing our content. We started looking at ourselves as a content company because we created a whole bunch of humor content that was proprietary to us and basically licensed it to other card companies.
Okay.
Again, that was unheard of.
Yeah.
Um, no sort of proud publisher would license their cards to American Greetings or some other card companies that were in those chain stores, and it was our way to sort of tap into that market. So we licensed into that mass market, the product that was appropriate, because obviously not all of it. And we still sold to the mom and pop as we did before. That proved to be, and we still do it today, very profitable and very helpful. And but again, controversial
Yeah.
and daring. I suppose in today a lot of people do it, but back then it was people looked at me like I was crazy. Then
And
the
for the
last
listeners, if you take a look at Ron's cards, you'll find some are, I mean, he pokes fun at everything, every side, every opinion. And
and
so
back
there's
then
something in
back
there.
where okay, so back then they were a lot more controversial than they are today.
Yeah.
And with the whole woke, movement and what's funny and what's okay and what's not okay, we were very much on the not okay side.
Yeah.
Looking back, I cringe sometimes at some of the stuff we publish. I wouldn't probably do it today with my understandings today. But back then, it was all about being in your face. It was all
Yeah.
about, I mean, it was the crazy 80s,
Yeah.
everything was okay. Basically, our motto was, test them if they can't take a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And any publicity is good publicity kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it was about standing out. And today, this was not going to work.
Yeah.
We cleaned up a lot, but and some some of it because we had to, and some of it because we really just thought better of the message we were putting out. It's good to be able to laugh about stuff, but but at one point, are you promoting it? Are you institutionalizing it?
Yeah.
Or you're just allowing people opportunity to find humor in it? And it's a fine line. I found in terms of what's okay and the role of humor. I mean, I think humor is incredibly important in our lives and a way to gain perspective on things that sometimes we not sometimes, most of the time we take ourselves way too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so be able to see humor in things is and has been, I think, very important, very important to me. But then there's also responsibility and sensitivities that I think, but it's going back to what is right and what's truths and how right and wrong is so relative to time, so relative to where you are.
Right.
Uh, um, you and I talked about it before. Cannibalism is perfectly acceptable in some parts of the
Right.
world, maybe not so much today anymore, but it was, at one point. Sacrificing young girls to the gods was a common practice in so many cultures. Um, so, our righteousness about right and wrong sometimes, I mean, it changes,
Yeah.
and
So it's often
we
a
get
lens that
adamant.
we
We
see
think
in the
we know,
culture. Yeah.
yeah, we think we know what's okay, what's not okay, what's right and wrong, but it really is a subjective subject. Um, so what we did then is what we did then, and we just choose not to today. That's
Yeah.
but you change with the times, I suppose.
Yeah. No, no,
Um,
I think that there's a lot of things that we're seen as okay a long time ago that today are not. And in 50 years, 100 years, I imagine we're all going to have probably evolved in other ways, right?
Yeah.
And
Look, in
so
the
I
whole
think,
Me Too, movement, right? Not
yeah,
that treating women that way as it used to be was ever okay, but most didn't stop to think that there was a
it was
problem.
just kind of accepted, and
Kind of
even the
accept.
idea, I was talking to my daughter the other day, just like how she couldn't believe that there were girls her age that aren't able to go to school in parts of the country, parts of the world, I mean, and,
Go to school and vote to learn to write.
vote. Yeah, and my daughter feels so empowered in her world, and she should, and I hope she always does.
Absolutely.
But yeah, in other parts of the world, that's seen as wrong. It's seen as wrong for a
Still
young
today,
girl to feel that way.
when do women get voting rights?
Yeah, it
Not that long ago.
was less than 100 years ago, or something like that,
So
right?
in all our righteousness, yeah. So
Yeah,
standards change, and thank God, and I think we evolve and we realize sometimes
Yeah.
it's painful and sometimes not. Um, uh, but anyway, so yeah, I look back and
Well, and I think, Ron, you and I have talked a lot about this. The consistency is when love is a motivation. I think that usually we're closer to doing that which is right. And knowing you as a person, I think that in no way were your cards ever a representation of hate or
absolutely that's
divisiveness. It
right.
was a moment of expressing your love for laughter, your love for just not taking each other so seriously. And you
Absolutely.
pick sides. I mean, I don't think you pick sides as a company either. I've seen you
Not
make
really.
fun of everybody and everything. And I think that that's part of humor, right? Is being able to just say,
And that's again was, sort of right up on
yeah,
the, that, we were equal opportunity offender and Christian or Muslim or Jew or fat or thin or young or old, I mean, or gay or straight, um, you were not safe.
yeah,
But,
I think that's
and so, we crossed some lines, I mean, some racial stuff, some whatever. I mean, things that I
yeah,
would today. And over the years, I went back and I've cleaned some stuff that,
yeah,
you know, oh, this is just not okay. I can't believe we published. But it really was in good spirit. I mean, at least the intention was, yeah, uh, to call out those taboos, to call out those. I
yeah,
mean, that's what humor is about, right? Like
yeah,
humor is about the shock value, right? Is when,
yeah,
what's funny in a joke is when, the punchline is a surprise,
yeah,
right? When you're not prepared, when it breaks taboos, when it makes you uncomfortable, right? I mean, Freud talks about the E, that's what makes it funny is that when uncomfortable. Sometimes it is for a good reason. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, so we were all about that, but we were never intended to hurt anybody or
yeah,
compromise anyone or offend anybody. Though we realized that we were.
yeah. No, I think, yeah, and I know you from on a personal level. We've just had a great meeting in New York a few weeks ago, and I just feel like you're genuinely pursuing good in your life and pursuing love. And so I don't imagine that's terribly different from who you were back then. Just some additional wisdom. I'm curious, as you look back now, you took the company you prioritized e-com, you prioritized licensing, you continue to service the distribution or the
I
small
forget.
mom and
I
pop
haven't
stores. Go ahead.
I haven't told you about the third most important part, which
Okay.
was
Yeah. What did you do?
we converted our whole production line
Yeah.
from the conventional offset printing to print on demand digital.
Okay. So carry less inventory.
Right. So that was a huge step, and again, very controversial one because digital printing was its infancy.
Yep.
Uh, there were very few printers that actually offered that service. I heard about it at a convention 5 or 8 years before as sort of like, oh, the way of the future, we're going to have those machines that, you know, and sort of been waiting for it and waiting for it. And back then, it was really even expensive, and we realized that we can't. It's not sustainable for us to do that 2,000 feet. And even though the price per unit was much higher than we were paying, and it's very difficult to calculate the financial advantage of that because there are so many costs like the waste cost and
Yeah.
and the rent you pay for to house all this waste and
The
so on.
organization of all the cards and the
Management of the inventory
catalog and
and the
yeah.
cost of being out of stock, right? Because in
Yeah.
conventional inventory, if you ship complete, you overstock, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's conventional wisdom and inventory management. But when you ship digital, you ship 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So right there, that 5 or 10%, so even though the price per unit went way up, it ended up being a lot more profitable.
Love that.
The cost of entry of new product changes drastically. So we were able to grow.
I was just pulling up a quote because it made me think of this, and I just quoted this actually in a LinkedIn post. But Bob Iger at Disney, he talks about they had to be willing to disrupt their own business model in order to grow and innovate and be relevant in a modern age, right? And you think of all the businesses that were reluctant to disrupt, right? And I listed a bunch in my post, but you think of like Toys R Us, you think of Blockbuster,
Without,
Kodak, Kia, BlackBerry, right? We go down the list. I was talking, even MySpace or Skype, like you think of these businesses that were once incredibly relevant, but weren't willing to do what you just did. If you didn't make those pivots, you would not be the business you are today. You may not even be around,
be
right?
here, we wouldn't have
Yeah.
been viable business.
Did you have people telling you were doing the wrong thing?
Oh, you don't need people. We have this little guy called this inner critic
Yeah. Inner
that,
critic.
right? That does a very good job for most of us of telling us, doubting us. Um, and yeah, I was doing things that were all, you know, sort of against everything I sort of knew or
Yeah.
what industry standards were or what other people were doing. People were looking at me like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Excuse
Yeah.
my and again, the necessity,
Yeah.
and to what you're saying is, we know that the only real constant is change,
Yeah.
and you know, resistance is futile. We got to
Yeah.
change with the time and respond
Well,
to the universe.
well, and I think that's what you've shown in your story. If we were to summarize your story so far, you left at 21 a culture and a location that maybe inhibited you or prohibited you from being authentic to who you felt like you were. You had to deal with being rejected or ostracized in that sort of environment. You came to a new place, had a new start. At 21, you got into this new business and you had just like all of these moments, these challenges, being diagnosed with MS, a partner passed away, the business about to fail. I mean, your life has not been, it's not like this linear journey that maybe somebody just hearing your story would see. But when we actually dive in, it's amazing the challenges that you've overcome and how you've reacted to,
I
to,
my
to these things.
my One of my very good friend Robert coined this. Maybe he didn't invent it, but basically um, called it a 40 years overnight success.
Yes, your overnight success.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
we,
exactly your story, Ron. 40-year overnight success.
and I didn't mention we had to go through a Chapter 13, 7 reorganization, and
Yeah,
it's not been a smooth, or easy ride, but you do your best, and yeah. So 40
yeah,
years or 40 something years overnight success, I suppose, is a good way to sum it up. As long as you do things from your heart, and the more aligned you are with what you think you want and what you really want, what your heart wants and what your mind think it wants, the smoother things go. And you asked me if I achieved what I set up to achieve, and
yeah.
I guess it depends how you look at it and how you perceive it. You get what you ask for, what's lined up inside. I firmly believe that. Except that most of the time, or very often, we are not even aware of that, and we have some
Well,
other idea in our mind of what it is that we need, what it is that we want, and it's not necessarily what we really want or what we really believe we deserve. And when the universe reflects or gives us what we really deserve or what we really want internally, heart wants, we look at this and with disappointment, right? Or as a challenge, like, oh, I wanted this and I get that. And when we really stop to think, okay, what are you really saying, or who you really are and what you're really projecting, you realize that you got everything you wanted, even if you didn't know that you wanted it. So I suppose I did,
I admire that. Well, I really appreciate that you generally get what you want. The challenge is clearly identifying and understanding what you want, right? And I think, but I've talked with
Well,
a
so
number
as
of people, and most of us don't take the time to really clearly define what we want.
right, really reflect and really be in touch with what really drives us,
Yeah,
and realize that whatever it is that in front of us, the challenges, good, bad, whatever we call it, is a reflection of our inner world. When you stop to look at the things that get you excited, that gets you upset, that gets your emotions running higher, it's an opportunity to look to see what's in you that is responding to that. And the more we are able to clean those attachments, clean those beliefs, clean those triggers, the smoother things become, the more we are in line with what we say we want and what we really want. And you know, when we become in control of our emotions and
Mm,
our reactions versus our emotions running us. And it's a very important and big distinction that makes a huge difference when you respond because you choose to in a way that
yeah.
you choose to, or you respond because your emotions are running you.
Well, I've been doing this exercise recently, and I've talked about it with you. Another one of my friends, he's writing a book, and he talks about the need to label and identify our emotions. And oftentimes we may, he says, based on his research, there are 7 emotions that we usually default to, right? We have very uneducated emotional intelligence and understanding, right? We're happy, we're sad, we're angry, we're hungry, we're whatever. It's these core emotions. But really, are you sad, or are you maybe reflective or pensive, or are you hurt, or like there's so many variations of these emotions that when we're labeling them correctly, it allows us to, I think in your way, almost sit back and watch and experience that emotion for what it is rather than let it be who we are,
I
right?
would go further than that.
Okay.
By being able to observe and develop this awareness of your feelings, of what is, you also gain the ability or the opportunity to choose how you feel. And I know
Mm,
it's a controversial concept, and most of us is going to say, no, I mean, he did this and he pissed me off, and I'm really
yeah.
angry. Okay, but you can choose not to be angry.
Yeah. You can choose how
It's
you
a choice.
react.
Happiness is a choice. We fool ourselves that we think I'm going to be happy
Yeah.
when I have this new pair of shoes, when I have this new fancy car, this younger girlfriend, this big house, any number of things that we tell ourselves going to make us happy. The truth is that rich people are not any happier than poor people. And, both you and I can look at our life. Actually, I don't know your background, but I'm assuming that you have more money today than you had 10 years ago. I don't know about you, but am I happier today than I was back then? Not because of the money.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, it makes life easier, whatever. But once you took care of your shelter and your food, but even then, I mean, when we are able to be in abundance, in trust, in what's what I call there is enough states. When we are able to stay in awareness of that, there is enough. There's enough light. There's enough food out there. There's enough water. There's enough air. There's enough everything. When we come from scarcity, when we come from winning at the cost of somebody else losing, when we don't come from a place of love
Yeah.
and abundance and trust, um, it makes a huge difference. And I think that's where real happiness comes from. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but
No, I'd like to finish these by asking if people are happy with their life, if they found what they're looking for. And I really appreciate your response there. I feel like you practically answered that you get to choose to be happy, and it's not, your circumstance isn't going to change
and
that choice.
I want for anybody, not you or myself, that I'm happy all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I come in and out, but I have this place, of reconnecting with this awareness, this understanding,
Yeah.
and and sort of realizing when, just recognizing my feelings, my emotion, and it gives you a choice about how you react and how you feel. Um, and it makes a huge difference. You
Yeah.
know?
I really love that, Ron. No, I don't think we know each other super well, but I think we've gotten to know each other over the years. And from what I can tell, I believe that you're consistent with what you're saying, that this isn't just something you say, and it's really who you are. And I admire your who you are as a person, having gone through the challenges that you've gone through. Some would blame their circumstances, and you've just taken it and responded in the way that I think is beautiful. So thanks for being an inspiration to me, Ron. And
We're happy to do that.
contributing value to our economy, right? In a growing and thriving business.
Oh yeah, that
Amazon even ran an
that
ad on you. I saw Amazon's ad on you the other day. You're a big enough deal for them to care about it. So that's pretty cool.
well, thank you for saying that. Now I know, what my purpose is, I guess,
Yeah.
to contribute to the economy. Um,
That's all that really matters. Come on, let's be honest.
right,
Just kidding.
absolutely.
Yeah, after everything we've
My
said.
my
No,
pleasure.
you're a good man, and I appreciate the time. Again, I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview, and look forward to further
Thank
conversations.
you for listening for my babble and my stories.
Yeah,
Um, talking about, if I may add one thing here,
please, please.
cards, and I became, card publisher. When I was very young, I remember, and I only remember this recently, sort of looking at the guides at the youth movement, at the you know, Boy Scouts kind of, and
Yeah,
thinking, oh, one day I want to be this guy that tells the story. And really, it sort of have this desire of like,
yeah.
when I grow up, that's what I want to be. Telling the stories is sort of fulfilling my childhood dreams. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, that's amazing, Ron. I'm glad, and hopefully it's not the first or the last. I'm sure of your story. So thanks, Ron. Have a wonderful
You're
day,
welcome.
and thank you everyone for listening. Um,
Thank you.
have a great day.